Welcome to Essential EGL+Batch. This video series features EGL Development Tools version 0.8. In today's lesson, which is lesson 16, we're going to borrow some code from lesson 6. We're going to copy the batch.lib.egl, and then we're going to fix it up with being able to log an exception. So we need to create a new package for our lesson today, which is lesson 16. And then in the lesson 16 package, I'm going to paste the batch lib from lesson 6. Let's create a new program now called lesson 16. And this lesson 16 program is actually a good template for production quality EGL programs because it handles an exception. It always handles an exception. This is a continuation also of the lesson from lesson 15 on exceptions. And we'll go into a little bit more detail about what an exception is in EGL. The purpose of this lesson is to create a function called logException. It takes an exception as a parameter. Actually, it takes an any exception as a parameter. And then, like lesson 15, for the moment, we're just going to print out the exception message, and we'll get back to this later. Okay, let's take this for a test drive and see what happens. Right now in the code, it's not ever throwing an unhandled exception. So we need to go to the exception lib demo and make it an unhandled exception. Make it throw in an unhandled exception. By taking out the comment symbol, which is // now it'll throw an unhandled exception, and we can go to that function, take a look at that, a reminder from last lesson. We create an exception with the message of do, and then the throw statement raises that exception or throws that exception where it can be caught in an onException block. So the syntax for handling an exception is this try onException block of code. What happens is that the code running in the try part, if it ever throws an exception, EGL is going to execute the code that's on the onException part. Now, if no exception is thrown in the try part, then the code in the onException part is never used. And then the onException part is actually passing the exception that was thrown. Let's take this for a test drive now that we have an unhandled exception and see what happens. So the exception lib demo comes to a halt, and the exception is thrown back to our program where it's logged. Well, as I said, we're going to get back to this log exception. We're going to make this do a little bit more work for us. There's a lot of opportunity to customize the log exception and make it do all kinds of things, including writing logs to writing exception messages to a log. So in this function, what we want to do is, as an example of what you can do in a log exception, is we want to create a message and print it out on the console. Now, that's an introduction of the clip function. And what clip does is it removes all of the spaces at the beginning and end of a string. Now, for message ID, if message ID is not used, then it's going to be equal to blank. So this expression is where it's not equal to blank is where the exception has been used, or the message ID has been used. We're going to add that to the message. So the message string starts out with the phrase error, and then if there's a message ID, it's going to be added a space and the message ID. And then with the function name, if the function name that's in the library, and we'll take a look at that as a reminder with open on selection. This is a library variable that we defined, and we're going to use the concatenation operator, which is : equals, to add something to the message. In this case, it's going to be space in space and the function name. And then we're going to do the same thing with the program name. If there is no function available, we're going to add the program name. So we'll have a nice prefix to our message. And then the last thing is the actual exception message. We're going to add a colon and a space and then the exception message. So it'll make it nice and readable, legible when we log it to the console. Now that we have a pretty decent log exception, and this is just an example of what you can have in a log exception, we're going to run the program again and click on the console icon and see what happens here. See, now it says there was an error in lesson 16 and then the exception message. So that's a little bit more specific. I'll just track down what an error is. This has been another lesson in an essential EGL batch.